I've been back in Paris for 3 days now, and everything feels wrong. The coffee tastes bitter, the streets seem too narrow, even the light looks different, grayer, less alive than the California sun I left behind. I keep checking my phone for messages that don't come, scrolling through photos that make my chest ache with something I don't have a name for yet. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. 3 months. That's all it was supposed to be. A summer exchange program through Science's Po, living with a host family in Berkeley, improving my English, adding some international experience to my CV. My parents were so proud when I got accepted. Their daughter experiencing real America, they said, as if America were some kind of educational theme park. I landed at Charles de Gaulle yesterday morning after the longest flight of my life, and Papa picked me up in his ancient Peugeot, chattering excitedly about how American I looked, how confident I seemed. If only he knew that the confidence he was seeing was actually just heartbreak wearing a brave face. The Martinez family. Even now, typing their name makes my fingers hesitate on the keyboard. Dr. David Martinez, a gentle giant who teaches comparative literature at UC Berkeley and makes the world's strongest coffee. Dr. Sarah Martinez, who studies climate change and has this habit of pausing mid-conversation to identify bird calls. And Rhonda, God, Rhonda. She's 26, just finished her postdoc at Stanford, researching something about medieval poetry and environmental anxiety that should have been boring but sounded fascinating when she explained it. When I first saw her at SFO 3 months ago, stepping out of their beat-up Subaru with those impossibly long legs and that California glow, I thought she was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen in real life. I was 18 and stupid and thought I knew everything about myself. Turns out, I knew nothing. Their house in the Berkeley Hills was like stepping into a different world, all glass and light and views of the bay, hummingbirds feeding from flowers I couldn't name. Everything organic and sustainable and consciously chosen, so different from our cramped apartment in the 15th, where Papa's books overflow from every surface and Maman complains about the noise from the street. We're probably more hippie than you're used to, Sarah said on that first day, setting down a mason jar of kombucha in front of me like it was perfectly normal to drink fermented tea from recycled glass. I wanted to hate it. The earnest environmentalism, the casual wealth, the way they said awesome about everything. But they were so genuinely kind, so interested in my thoughts about everything from French politics to the proper way to make crepes, that I found myself relaxing despite my jet-lagged cynicism. And then there was Rhonda, switching effortlessly between English and French, helping me navigate American slang, asking about my life in Paris with genuine curiosity rather than the polite interest most adults show teenagers. She had this way of listening, really listening, that made me feel like my opinions mattered, like I was worth paying attention to. "Your English is incredible," she said on that first evening as we sat on their deck, watching fog roll in over the bay. "I'm jealous. When I was in Toulouse, I could barely order coffee without embarrassing myself." "You studied in France?" "Junior year of college. Best time of my life, until I got homesick and spent the last month eating nothing but McDonald's and crying on FaceTime with my parents." She said it with such self-deprecating humor that I found myself laughing, the tension I'd been carrying since the airport finally starting to ease. "What did you miss most?" I asked. "This," she said, gesturing at the view. "But also stupid things. Peanut butter, the way Americans are loud in restaurants, my dad's terrible dad jokes." "David makes dad jokes? The worst. You'll see." And I did see, over the course of that incredible summer that feels both like yesterday and like a lifetime ago. David's terrible puns at breakfast, Sarah's habit of naming every plant we passed on our hikes, the way they teased each other with the easy affection of people who'd been together for decades, who'd chosen each other every day for 20 years and somehow still found each other interesting. I'd never seen love like that. Not the passionate, dramatic kind from movies, but something steadier, more real. My parents love each other, I think, but it's careful, intellectual. This felt different, messier, and more alive. Rhonda became my unofficial tour guide, showing me all the places tourists never see. We drove all over the Bay Area in her ancient Honda, windows down, her carefully curated playlists providing the soundtrack to my American education. Bookstores in the Mission, where cats slept on poetry shelves. Dim sum in Chinatown, where no one spoke English, and everything was perfect. Beaches where elephant seals sunbathed like awkward tourists. "This is my favorite place," she said as we climbed down to the water at Half Moon Bay. "I come here when I need to think." The Pacific was nothing like the Mediterranean, wild and unpredictable, waves crashing against black rocks with beautiful violence. We sat on driftwood, sharing coffee from her thermos, watching surfers in the distance. "What do you think about?" I asked. "Everything. Whether I'm doing the right thing with my life. Whether any of this matters." She gestured at the endless water. "The ocean doesn't care about our little human dramas. It's been here for millions of years. It'll be here long after we're gone." That sounds depressing. I find it comforting, takes the pressure off. She turned to look at me then, and the air between us suddenly felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. I felt suddenly aware of everything: the salt smell of the ocean, the warmth of the sun on my face, the way her eyes had gold flecks that caught the light. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you think about when you need to think?" "I don't know. I've never really had a place like this." "Everyone needs a place like this. Maybe we'll find you one." The way she said "we" made my heart do something complicated. I should have known then what was happening, should have recognized the signs. The casual touches that lingered too long, the way she'd catch me staring and hold my gaze instead of looking away, the conversations that seemed to circle around something we couldn't name. Her parents, absorbed in their summer classes and research, didn't seem to notice the electricity building between us. They'd retreat to their study after dinner, leaving us alone on the deck with the hummingbirds and the twinkling lights of San Francisco across the water. "Tell me about French boys," she said one night, completely out of nowhere. "What about them? Are they really as romantic as everyone says?" I thought about the boys I'd dated in Paris, sweet, fumbling encounters that had felt more like checking boxes than actual desire. Not really, or maybe I just wasn't interested enough to notice. What would make you interested? The question hung between us in the warm evening air, loaded with possibility. I felt heat creep up my neck that had nothing to do with the California sun. "I don't know," I said finally. "I'm still figuring that out." She nodded, turning back to watch the fog roll in. "Me too." God, we were so obvious. How did her parents not see it? How did I not see it until it was too late to protect myself? The festival was her idea. Some outdoor concert in Golden Gate Park, local bands and food trucks, and people dancing barefoot in the grass. She wore a flowing sundress and flowers in her hair, looking like a California dream, while I felt overdressed in my French girl uniform of jeans and a striped shirt. But when she linked her arm through mine as we walked through the crowd, I felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time all summer. We spread a blanket near the stage and shared overpriced tacos, while a folk band played songs about love and California dreams. When the music got more danceable, she pulled me to my feet. "I don't really dance," I protested. "Neither do I. That's what makes it fun." We danced badly, laughing at our terrible moves, surrounded by strangers, but feeling like we were the only people in the world. When a slow song came on, She pulled me closer, one hand at my waist, the other still holding mine. "Julie," she said, and my name sounded different in her voice, softer somehow. I looked up at her, at the way the setting sun caught the gold in her eyes, and felt everything I'd been trying not to feel crash over me like those waves at Half Moon Bay. Without thinking, without planning, I stood on my tiptoes and kissed her. It was soft, over almost before it began. But when I pulled back, she was smiling. "I was hoping you'd do that," she said. "Really?" "Really." That night changed everything. She slipped into my room after her parents went to bed, and we lay together in the narrow guest bed, whispering in the dark. She played with my fingers, threading them through hers, and then apart again, while I memorized the sound of her breathing, the way she said my name like it was something precious. "I've never felt like this before," I admitted. "Like what?" "Like I finally understand something I didn't even know I was confused about." She turned to face me, her hand finding mine under the carefully chosen organic cotton sheets. "That's how you know it's real." But real didn't make it easy. The next morning, we had to pretend nothing had changed over David's famous pancakes and Sarah's commentary about the declining bee population. "You're quiet this morning, Julie," Sarah observed, looking up from her tablet where she was reading climate research papers. "Jet lag catching up with you?" "Something like that," I managed, while Rhonda hid her smile behind her coffee mug. We developed a language of glances across the dinner table, of meaningful silences when her parents asked about our daily adventures. When David suggested we all watch a movie together, Rhonda would stretch and yawn dramatically. "Actually, I think Julie and I are going to take a walk," she'd say. "Show her the neighborhood at night." "Don't go too far," Sarah would call after us. "And take flashlights." We'd walk to the end of their street, where it dead-ended at a hiking trail, ostensibly to look at the view of the bay. But really, we'd find a bench hidden behind eucalyptus trees, where we could hold hands without worrying about neighbors' windows, where she could kiss me softly and tell me about her day in a way that felt completely different from the careful conversations we had in front of her parents. "This is insane," she said one night as we sat on our secret bench, her thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "I feel like I'm 16 again, sneaking around." "Are you complaining?" "No," she said quickly. "God, no. It's just, I haven't had to hide who I care about in years. It's weird going back to that." The hardest part was breakfast. Sarah was always up early, making her elaborate smoothies and checking her emails before the day officially began. Sometimes I'd find her in the kitchen when I came down for water, and she'd smile at me in that warm, maternal way that made my chest tight with guilt. "You're fitting in so well here," she said one morning, not looking up from her laptop. "Rhonda seems really happy to have you around. She's been lighter somehow, more herself." I nearly choked on my water. "Really?" "She works too hard usually. Always buried in her research, always stressed about the future. But this summer, she's been different, more present. I think having you here has been good for her." If only she knew how good, I thought, remembering the way Rhonda had kissed me goodnight just hours earlier, whispering French endearments against my ear until I was dizzy with want. We got better at it as the weeks went on. The careful choreography of affection disguised as friendship. Rhonda would suggest activities that gave us excuses to be alone. "Julie hasn't seen the Golden Gate Bridge yet," or "I promised to show her that bookstore in the Mission." Her parents, absorbed in their summer routines, seemed happy that their guest was being so well taken care of. But there were close calls. The afternoon, David came home early and found us on the couch, sitting closer than strictly necessary, Rhonda's hand resting on my knee. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers, but he just smiled and asked if we wanted him to make his famous guacamole for dinner. Or the night Sarah knocked on my door to ask if I needed extra blankets, and I had to answer through the crack while Rhonda hid in my closet like we were in some ridiculous romantic comedy. "The fog's rolling in," Sarah said, concerned. "These old houses get cold at night." "I'm fine," I squeaked, hyper-aware of Rhonda's suppressed laughter from behind my clothes. "Really warm, actually." The constant vigilance was exhausting, but also thrilling. Every stolen touch felt electric, every hidden glance across the dinner table charged with significance. We were writing our own secret story within the larger public one of the French exchange student and her generous host family. The rest of the summer passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful pretense. We became experts at reading each other across crowded rooms, at finding excuses to be alone, at keeping our faces neutral when her parents were around. We drove to Monterey and held hands in the dark tunnels of the aquarium, jellyfish floating above us like alien dreams. We hiked in Muir Woods, making out against ancient redwoods while tourists passed obliviously nearby. We spent afternoons at her favorite beach, ostensibly reading, but mostly just watching each other when we thought the other wasn't looking. It felt like playing house, like trying on a life that could never really be mine. "What happens when you go back?" she asked one night as we lay on the deck, looking up at stars I couldn't see in Paris. The question I'd been dreading, the one that made my chest tight every time I thought about my return flight. "I don't know," I said. "You could extend your visa, stay longer." The hope in her voice nearly broke me. "What about university?" "You could defer, take a gap year." I wanted to say yes so badly it hurt, but 18-year-old me was still learning the difference between love and summer madness, between what felt possible and what actually was. "I can't," I whispered. She was quiet for a long time. "I know." The morning I left, Jesus, was that really just 4 days ago? She drove me to SFO in the same beat-up Subaru that had picked me up 3 months earlier. Everything looked the same, but we were completely different people than we'd been that first day. Her parents hugged me goodbye, made me promise to stay in touch, invited me back any time. David slipped me a care package of California things I couldn't get in France. Good coffee, fancy chocolate, a book of poetry by someone I'd never heard of but should read. Then Rhonda walked me to security, and for a moment I thought she might ask me to stay, might give me a reason to miss my flight and figure out the consequences later. Instead, she kissed my forehead and whispered, "Call me by your name, and I'll call you by mine." It's from a book she'd read to me once, about love and identity and the ways we carry pieces of each other forward. I understood it as a promise, a way of holding on to what we'd found even when we couldn't hold on to each other. I watched her through the security glass until I couldn't see her anymore, then sat at my gate crying into overpriced airport coffee while families reunited around me and business travelers typed importantly on their laptops. On the plane, I pressed my face to the window as we took off, watching the Bay Area shrink below me until it was just light scattered across the darkness. Somewhere down there, she was driving home alone, probably crying too, probably wondering like I was whether what we'd found was real or just summer magic that would fade in the harsh light of real life. Now I'm back in my childhood bedroom, staring at walls covered with posters of bands I'm not sure I like anymore, trying to readjust to a life that suddenly feels too small. My parents keep asking about the American experience, expecting stories about Hollywood and hamburgers and whatever French people are supposed to think about America. How do I tell them that America tastes like coffee shared at dawn and sounds like her laugh and feels like dancing badly in Golden Gate Park? How do I explain that I left a piece of myself in a guest room in Berkeley? That I'm not sure how to be Julie from Paris when part of me is still Julie who kissed Rhonda at a music festival? My phone buzzes. A text from her, just a photo. The view from Half Moon Bay. Waves crashing against those black rocks where we sat and talked about everything and nothing. No caption, no words needed. I type back, missing the Pacific, then delete it. Too much, not enough. Everything and nothing I want to say. Instead, I send a photo of the Seine from my bedroom window, gray and familiar, and nothing like the wild beauty of the California coast. She hearts it immediately, 3 hearts actually, and I stare at my phone screen like it holds the secrets of the universe. Maybe it does. Maybe love, or whatever this is, doesn't have to make sense or last forever to matter. Maybe some experiences are meant to change you and then let you go, like those summer storms that roll through and leave everything different afterward. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I'll see her again, if this feeling will fade, if I'll look back on this summer as the time I discovered something important about myself, or just as a beautiful detour before real life began. But right now, sitting in my too small bedroom with French rain pattering against the window, I know one thing for certain. I'm not the same person who boarded that plane to San Francisco 3 months ago. That Julie was curious about America and confident in her assumptions about herself and her future. This Julie, the one sitting here now, still tasting California on her tongue, knows that the most important discoveries happen not when you're looking for them, but when you're brave enough to recognize them when they find you. My laptop is open, a blank document waiting. Maybe I'll write about this summer, try to capture what happened before the details fade. Maybe I'll apply for another exchange program, somewhere else, anywhere that might teach me more about who I'm becoming. Or maybe I'll just sit here for a while longer, letting myself feel all of it, the joy and the loss, and the impossible lightness of having been, for 3 months, exactly who I was meant to be.